On the 650th day of the war in Ukraine, the fighting was concentrated in these areas. During the last few days, the heaviest battles are taking place on the northern part of the Avdiivka sector, where Russian and Ukrainian forces are fighting for the control of the village of Stepove, the defensive positions located south of the settlement and along the railway adjacent to the chemical plant. In order to stop the Russians from advancing and establishing control over a series of positions on the Stepove chemical plant line, the Ukrainian army reacted quickly and launched several well-coordinated counterattacks throughout the entire front line. The Ukrainian counterattacks were mostly focused in two directions. The first group, consisting mostly of soldiers and armored vehicles of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, stormed the three-line positions between Stepove and the chemical plant, trying not to allow the Russians to consolidate on their newly captured positions. Previously, the head of the Avdiivka military administration, Vitaly Barabash, declared that the Ukrainian soldiers were successful in this direction as they managed to restore control over most of the trenches and dugout positions. Recent geolocated footage proved this declaration to be correct. Before the battle took place, reconnaissance drones of the Ukrainian forces spotted the Russian infantry units taking cover inside the forest line about 1 kilometer north of the chemical plant. Immediately, the Ukrainian FPV drones targeted the Russian forces, and soon after the Bradley infantry fighting vehicles of the 47th Brigade arrived and covered the three lines with heavy cannon fire, using fragmentation rounds and destroying the entire Russian unit in the process. Shortly after, Ukrainian infantry forces landed in the area, and after conducting a clearing operation, they took these positions under their control. In the direction of Stepove, the Ukrainian response was even more powerful, as the Ukrainian counterattacks involved the combined use of helicopters, tanks and armored fighting vehicles. Here, taking advantage of a nearby forest belt that is located only about 50 meters north of the village, the Russian infantry forces tried to infiltrate, and after pushing over 500 meters to the west, they attempted to enter inside the central part of the village of Stepove and took cover inside the damaged buildings. However, the Ukrainian response was quick, and after artillery preparation and a barrage of missiles fired by the Ukrainian helicopters, a Ukrainian tank arrived from the village of Berdichi, entered Stepove, and upon reaching near the central part of the village, opened fire over the buildings, suppressing the Russian forces and making way for the Ukrainian soldiers to start clearing the entire area. Ukrainian forces also attacked the Russian positions on the eastern edge of the village, as the Ukrainian Bradley infantry fighting vehicle was seen attacking the Russian positions along the nearby tree lines. The presence of the Russian troops here is confirmed by the fact that the Russian forces actually tried to fight back and hit the Bradley using an RPG, but it seems that the Ukrainian vehicle survived the impact and returned safely to the rear. It seems that apart from the high casualties among their infantry forces during their recent attacks, the Russian forces have also lost a significant number of tanks and armored vehicles in the vicinity of Stepove. The footage published by Ukrainian sources shows that at least 2 tanks and 2 armored personnel carriers of the Russian army were destroyed a few hundred meters away from the village. In Bakhmut front, battles are ongoing northwest of the city of Bakhmut as well as north of Klishchiivka. The Ukrainian source Deep State reported that the Russian forces managed to advance about 500 square meters north of the village of Hromove. Overall, after weeks of heavy clashes in this sector, the Russian forces were able to recover most of the positions they lost during Ukraine's summer offensive. However, Ukrainian forces still maintain control over the most favorable ground and the strategic heights to the west, and as a result, the Russian advance here is likely to slow down in the coming days and weeks. In Klishchiivka sector, Russian and Ukrainian forces are clashing on the northern outskirts of the village, with the railway once again being considered by the Ukrainian source Deep State as a gray zone, indicating that the Ukrainian forces are actively trying to counterattack the Russian advance in this direction. On the other hand, as I predicted a few days ago, the Russian army continued to launch waves of infantry forces along the forest lines near Klishchiivka in attempts to reach the trench system located on the dominant heights west of the village. It seems that the Russian forces were able to get very close to their objective, but so far there is no evidence to suggest that they were able to establish control over the fortifications. Friends, if you like my daily updates, I kindly ask you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as this will greatly help the channel to reach a wider audience. That's all for today's update. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and have a great day.